Hello and welcome to episode number 108 of the Board Game Barrage podcast, a podcast about board games, the latest hotness, and how to have fun with your friends, even when you're losing. Joining me today are my friends, the losers, Mark and Neelan.
Hello. Hey.
I think if it's not clear, the opposite of a loser would be, since I didn't introduce myself as, sort of one of the aforementioned losers, right, that I am in fact 100%
ergo
a winner by default ad maxim hominem de facto. Today on the Board Game Barrage podcast, we are looking back to the year 2019. What did we get right? What did we get wrong? And what did we not play? But before we look back to the year 2019, we will talk about the board games that we have been playing recently. Neelan, what have you been playing recently?
So very quickly, I want to talk about XCOM the board game.
Boring.
No, this is actually a pretty decent video game adaptation.
Board spelled B-O-R-D-E.
Wow.
I'm sure that's already a show. Just like boarding, but it's like long.
Right.
The word.
Right.
Not just another board game podcast. That's the subtitle.
Not just another board game podcast.
Boarding.
Got it. That works. Rebrand.
Because if you spell boarding, with a lot of A's, that'll be bad for search engine optimization. But when you add the subtitle, not just another board game podcast,
you get back in there.
Then people will know that it's in fact just another board game.
Not just another board game.
Well,
no, but by virtue of the fact that it showed up when you search board game podcast.
Great.
Then
Good that we cleared that up.
Yeah.
You're playing
XCOM is a pretty decent video game adaptation, despite not really playing anything like the video game. It's one of those, I've mentioned before that I like the process of adaptation. This is one of the more interesting ways to handle it, where you're effectively capturing the feel of the video game through an entirely different mechanism. The video game series is famous for being divided into two main phases, where you're managing your base through finances, recruiting soldiers, building structures, researching technology, and then a tactical phase where you send your guys out onto this little tactical map, you shoot aliens, you come back, repeat. The XCOM board game sort of largely loses the tactical map side of it and focuses on the sort of the base manager. It does maintain briefly recruiting soldiers and sending them on little missions, but there's no strategic overworld map element to that. The way that the game plays out is using an app. It is entirely an app-driven game. There's no way to play it without the app. And the app basically runs as like an overlord in the background. There's a timed phase where and typically you want 4 people to play this because there are 4 unique stations. The app will give a command to say Commander, now retrieve 11 coins from the budget. Scientist, now allocate something to research 1. Squad leader, aliens are in the base, send out a person to defend the base. And they have about 10 seconds to respond to each of the things, making very quick decisions. Once all of that has completed, then you have a resolution phase where each of these stations activates one by one, and this isn't timed anymore, and you're playing a press your luck dice game. The reason to push your luck is every time you attempt to get successes, the threat level goes up and the chances that you'll fail on the enemy die increases. And this is how the rest of the stations work. You're sending ships out to fight UFOs. They either all die or you kill a UFO. You attack enemies in the base, either your soldiers die or you kill the aliens. It's a lot of management of resources. One of the roles of the commander is primarily about, I have this much money, I can only allocate this much research, this many soldiers, this much to satellites, and so on. And you're kind of just pitching to the commander constantly, can I get one more thing? We need one more thing desperately, and they have to be managing that budget. There are a lot of little fun decisions to be made in that time phase of XCOM. The thing I had sort of forgotten, this has been a long time since I played this, is how incredibly frustrating the resolution phase can be. Because the dice are so weighted towards failure, it kind of just feels like you're just constantly rolling nothing, right. All your people die. And that's awful. I wish there was a slight more veneer towards feeling more momentary successes, because otherwise what happens, the game just gets drudged down and feeling like you're just constantly failing. And that's frustrating. I did enjoy my time with XCOM in the past. I was looking forward to playing it again. I feel like it's on the way out for me.
If memory serves, you had an issue where you were constantly stuck in the training mission.
Yeah,
Okay,
this is actually pretty relevant, even like my play of yesterday, because that's exactly it. The game doesn't actually have a rule book included. It has a quick start sheet, and then quite cleverly it says, hey, run through the app to get the tutorial. So if you're ideally playing this with the same group of 4 players, you do the tutorial, you go onto a normal mission, and you just sort of get better and better at the game. My experience, having played XCOM in the past, I could never maintain a consistent group with it, so we would have to run through the tutorial every single time. Now, that's not to say that we couldn't have attempted just to explain all the rules to someone, but now having tried this, I now know why it's recommended you just do the tutorial.
Oh, you try to jump right in.
We tried to jump right into it yesterday because we had 2 players who had never played it before. 2 of us had played it in the previous years. One had read up on the rules before attempting this game yesterday, and one person was completely new to it. So we thought, let's go around and try to explain everything. It becomes very apparent, like 30 seconds into the time phase, oh wait, we forgot about this thing. And there's no real way to course correct, so we kind of had to do, let's just go through one round and then we'll just reset it and start again. And that kind of worked okay. It's not that much once you've gotten used to one cycle of it, but it was frustrating how much I had forgotten. And because there's no reference guide except for the app itself, which isn't organized in a way that's super logical, it was a little bit of a pain.
Right.
So that's XCOM. An interesting idea. This is a fairly little-known Eric Lang design, actually, and certainly like a novel attempt to recreate a video game. XCOM is sort of characterized by just feeling like you're getting stomped on constantly, so it does kind of capture that, but not in a way that I found satisfying versus how it feels in the video game. That's XCOM, the board game.
So one of my most anticipated games of the last few years, and sort of jumping the gun on our episode topic, is the pseudo sequel to Archipelago, my number 2 favorite board game of all time. And this is from Christoph Bollinger, I'm sure that's not how you say it, who is famous for Earth Reborn as well as Archipelago, has a game called Living Planet. Living Planet is a exploration stock market game set on a specific planet. Actually, there's a whole setup story that I read to Neelan and Christina when we played it. And there's actually a story you read after the game ends, which I also read to them. But Living Planet is a game where you are selecting a die face from a pool of 6 cards, 1 to 6, and then that is slotting into a tray that is moving down a set of actions that you take. The die you select is the disasters that happen on the board. The die you select informs what type of actions you will take, and the die you select also informs what will produce resources. So it's a very intricate decision that you make, and then if you choose the 5 die, then you actually can't choose that 5 die again until you return all the cards back to your hand. In the game, you're exploring a planet, you are setting up buildings and trying to extract resources from the living planet, and you're also impacting a stock market. So you are trying to raise the price of resources you want, but not raise them too high so that it crashes down. You're also trying to tank the stock price of resources that you see your friends and family investing in. Living Planet is, I don't know, I don't want to bury the lead or do a shut up and sit down mid-review turnaround. Probably the most disappointed I've been in a board game in at least a year.
Wow.
It has the same artist as Archipelago. It takes the beautiful hexagon sort of explore out. It shares about 50%, I would say, of the DNA of Archipelago, but it strips out the hidden objectives, it strips out the trader, and it strips out any semi-co-op nature to it at all.
This is purely a standard competitive feel
Correct.
to it? Okay.
And what you are left with is some of the messiness of Archipelago, because Archipelago isn't perfect around all sides. It's more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, my glib response at the time as, okay, you kept 50% of Archipelago and exploration was one of the things you decided to keep.
There are numerous expansions for Living Planet, and I have all of them, and I have no interest in playing them. The only way that I would play this again is to show Mark. I think there is something interesting in the way that the stock market works. And what's cool about the stock market is that, unlike Biblios, where your ability to impact the market price of things is very limited, in Living Planet, every time you go to the market, you actually draw a hand of cards that just screw with the market. And before you even interact with the market, you mess with the market. Okay. So the market is constantly being screwed with. Any game where there is a puzzle to figure out how to do something on the board annoys me. It annoys me, in the Mr. Lacerda sense. And this game has a little bit of a puzzle, and it's just like, okay, I want to do that, but now how do I do that? And how does that impact with what Neelan's doing?
Felt like escape planning in that respect?
Yeah.
That sounds okay.
Well, it just felt like there were too many systems to get to what I wanted to do, which was explore on the board and explore the living planet. This is perhaps the prettiest board game production I have ever seen.
I would second that.
The money in the game is like chits. Like if it was in like Android Netrunner, people would be like losing their mind.
Like slightly foily.
Gold foil, like shiny in the light.
Yeah.
Neelan, what did you think of Living Planet?
Yeah, I had similar frustrations. I think there are systems in there that I really enjoyed. I think manipulating the stock market is something that we generally like in the games we play when you are sort of like, okay, I can see Kellen's going for this thing. How do I inadvertently screw him over? I already mentioned exploration as a problem in both Archipelago and this. It happened at least once to me where I was like, oh man, I'm going to do the explore action. Oh man, I can't explore to any of these tiles. That sucks. There were a couple of points where we got really beaten down by the way the disasters resolve, in that a lot of the puzzle that Kellen describes has to sort of be decided on the upfront of, I'm going to choose this die and hope that Christina doesn't choose this die. And then your ability to respond to the disasters that other people see on the board exists, but isn't as strong as it could be for how devastating they are. Because a disaster can wipe out all of your tiles and all of your pieces on a single hex of the board. And that's huge. I mean, that happened to me in my game early on and just kind of devastated my board position. I think a large part of the game is learning to mitigate against that. But like I said, it doesn't seem like there are that many avenues to do this because of the way that you have to front load these decisions at the start of your round. There's something to Living Planet where I wonder what the version of this game is with just one less rule in the way that you're allocating those dice and these cards you have to choose, like Kellen said, just to get towards doing what's actually fun. There is a core fun game there that's just kind of wrapped in these weird mechanics that.
Yeah, timing is so important.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that is fun is if the red die goes first, then you're going to be completely fine and you produce resources like normal because the disaster strikes. But then if the red die is last or before you, so where a die is in the turn order matters a lot, and first player just gets to choose. So there's a lot of like, Kellen, don't put that die in front. And you're like, well, are you going to... It's a variant that you can negotiate that. So we, of course, did that. But almost inevitably, it was just putting all the dice in a way that would just raise everything your opponents had and then allow you to produce. So that was funny. But fiddly building system, a lot of little different buildings that are hard to understand the difference between them, iconography that's tough to read, Archipelago, which resources are on which card versus how many native people are on that tile was the problem in Archipelago. In Living Planet, you can't quite tell which type of disaster each dice is. So it's like a red tornado dice, and then there are people online who are like, I built the wrong building thinking that was a tornado, that was an earthquake die, but it's a tornado die. Extremely beautiful. Not one I'm interested in revisiting. I should have known better, but buy my copy at the Strategicon Math Trade.
How long does it run you guys?
It wasn't so bad.
Okay.
Honestly, if any of that sounded like, maybe I'd like this, I will play it again, and I would like to.
Yeah.
And some of the expansions... One of them seems interesting to me.
Okay, well, to be clear, it didn't sound fun, but I would like to try it if it's not a
Yeah, of course.
long game.
And I think it comes down to time, right?
Sure.
Because I would love to play it more.
Yeah.
I have such high esteem for Archipelago that,
And I was looking at the pictures, and it looks very Archipelago. It looks like a more beautiful Archipelago.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Nothing could be. So that is Living Planet by a designer who I won't name again.
I just wanted to touch base on a couple of games that I played at BGB West. I was able to teach a couple listeners Voyages and Marco Polo, one of my favorite games, and this was another great play of it. I think Voyages and Marco Polo might be the game that I enjoy teaching the most. The player powers are so crazy. As I was teaching it, I was getting more and more excited for that last bit when I tell everybody, everything I've taught you, throw it out, because when you get this power, so-and-so happens. And I was really excited about that last part of the rules explanation, but I was like, even as I was getting excited, I'm like, you're getting way too excited. Because I was playing with experienced board game players. They hadn't played Marco Polo before, but they were familiar with board games. So I thought, they'll think it's cool. But when I made the big reveal, sure enough, they're like, whoa, I don't have to roll the dice. Like, it was really, really cool. So the explanation was great. The game was great. Marco Polo is a great game. I'm excited to try Marco Polo 2, but I'm just a little concerned about this alleviating of the tightness, which makes Marco Polo so great. That was Marco Polo. Another game that Neil and I played was Heaven and Ale. This was Neil's first play of it. I've played it a couple times. Speaking of games, again, that are excruciatingly tight, Heaven and Ale is even more so than Marco Polo. Marco Polo is a hell of a tight game. But Heaven and Ale is a game I've talked about.
That's hella tight, bro.
That's right. Kellen injecting some youth into the podcast.
You said it, man.
No, I know.
You're keeping up with the kids.
You balance me out. I'm the Hugh Downs guy, and you're the hella tight guy. I've talked about how Heaven and Ale works before. It's got sort of a rondel mechanism where you're going around the board, gathering resources. But the thing is that, like Francis Drake, and this is one aspect of Francis Drake I love, once you move up the board to grab something, you can never move backwards. So there's the decision where I really want that 5 wood tile, but if I jump up to grab it, I'm foregoing all the stuff behind me. And because the game is relatively short in terms of number of turns you have and tight in terms of the economy, those decisions feel like excruciating, feel like decisive every single time. There's that part that makes it difficult. There's also all these tiles that you're picking up. You're just not picking them up as resources. Most of the time, you're picking them up to buy them, and you're buying them with money that you often don't have. Every decision feels really, really excruciating, and there's not much wiggle room. What did you think of Heaven and Ale?
I really enjoyed it. Being the only player who was playing it for the first time, I did substantially worse than everyone else at the table. But I always love a game that I can do terribly at and still want to keep playing more, because like the system is just so good. It does a thing that this weight of heavy Eurogame doesn't do very often, where every decision is not only excruciating to yourself, but is you have to be considering every other person. Because like if I'm close to Mark on the track, it's kind of like, I can do this. I really want to do this. But if I don't, I know Mark's going to do that instead.
There were more than one time in that game where I'm like, it's just Nealon and it's my turn. All I want is Nealon to go to any space but that one space. Yeah, right. And then sure enough, Nealon, because it was his first game, he was doing a lot of considering, and he would like pick up his pawn and move it to one place and then move it back to another place. Like, I want, unsure. And it was just killing me. I was like, because at first he moves it to some place I don't care about, and then he moves it back, and more often than not, he would move it to the spot I wanted to. I was just killing me.
Yeah, that was painful every single time, because the same thing would happen to me as other people take spots. You're just like, the one spot I need, because you sort of have this tendency to map out, okay, I'm going to go to this spot, then this spot, then this spot in advance. And you have to adapt, obviously, to what other spots get taken, because the one thing you can do, and people were doing this in the game, is that you might jump half the track down, just foregoing everything. And then suddenly you're like, wait, no, now this person... Exactly. Now this person might be taking my third, fourth, and fifth picks before I've even taken my second. It's got a lot of good stuff. There's this very good balance between getting stuff early for the resources versus needing to get them also kind of early so that you can score with them later in the game. Instead of like shifting primarily from resource to point gathering, you have to be thinking about the point gathering from the beginning. It's painful.
It's a kind of heavy game that I love because really it's heavy in planning and strategy and tactics alone, but in terms of rules overhead, it's like very, very
totally.
The rules get out of the way.
It's not that complex. It's just agonizing. I really enjoyed it.
So that was Heaven and Ale, and a new game that I tried. This was a 2019 release, Mystic Market. Mystic Market is the lightest of the games that I'm reviewing. This is a economic manipulation stock market type of game with a fantasy veneer. Super, super light. On your turn, there's a market of 6 different types of potion. On your turn, you can either buy these potions from the market or trade potions you have for potions in the market. And what you're doing is there's which is the glitziest part of this game, is there's this ramp that is where the market is set, and the ramp has 6 little glass bottles on it filled with the color of the potion. So there's like the orange potion is literally a little glass bottle with orange dust in it. And as the bottle slides down this market ramp, it's worth more. So when it gets to the bottom, it's worth 15 coins, but if it's at the top, it's worth the least. And the conceit is that once you cash in a set of cards to make that money from the market, wherever it was on the price, it slides to the top. So if green is worth $10 and I cash in my green potions, I get $10, but now the green potion is worth the least amount. So there's a timing thing where if you see a player ahead of you picking up green cards or red cards, whatever, you may want to jump ahead and cash it in so they are stuck. It's fine for as light as it is. If you're looking for a real light, sort of pretty market manipulation game, you could do worse. There's not really much to it. I think it's a game that you'll forget after a play or two, but it does what it intends to do pretty painlessly. And yeah, the table presence is sort of fun. That is Mystic Market.
Well, that is going to do it for the games that we played this week.
You should do that voice all the time.
So we will jump right into our feature topic.
Feature presentation.
So we are going to look back at the anticipated games that we were excited about for 2019, whether that was at the beginning of the year, whether that was at Gen Con or Essen. And we are going to answer for our sins. We are going to tell you where they are now. That girl or guy that you looked at in high school in 2005, where are they now?
This is exactly what I thought you were going to be doing.
I mean, I am thriving. I'm way better than where I thought I would be back then, but now.
Right.
But the question
Here
is,
you are.
Where are they now? Not where am me now?
Yeah.
Because
Because you're here.
I've arrived.
I can attest to the fact that you are indeed here.
Great. So we are going to quickly go backwards. We're going to unwind this thing like a tape on rewind. A VHS.
Yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
You know about those.
I know about that. I know about Betamax. Yeah.
I don't know anything about Betamax except to say Betamax. So why don't we start with our Essen list, and we're going to do a little bit of a round table. This is not a countdown per se, but maybe per se it is. Because we're going from 5 to 1, which is
3 times, in fact.
which is the order of a countdown.
Right.
Neelan, tell us what you think of the Magnificent.
The Magnificent.
Number 5 most anticipated game of Essen.
I have not yet played the Magnificent, unfortunately. It hasn't had a US release yet. I believe it is going to be releasing here in February. We're hoping to play it sometime in the next month or so. I'm still excited for this.
All I hear is you didn't want it bad enough.
Yeah, despite the magic. And
All right, Mark. 3, 2, 1.
Boring.
Wow.
We did that on the first try. Don't anyone think
I
that
had
we
to look
did
at your
it.
mouth shape. I had no idea what we were doing.
No, you knew.
But-
Don't cut that part out. Okay, Mark, your number 5 game for Essen that you were excited about was Trismegistus,
It
the
was
ultimate formula.
Trismegistus. I've played this once.
Oh, you have?
I have played it once, yeah. Did not love it. I think this might be the most anti-Kellen game on my entire list of 50 games. I was feeling sick, and this is a super long game and super complicated and a lot of working parts, sort of Lacerda-y in that respect. This is a situation, I think we talked about this in the past, where I had a bad play of it. We talked about it last week, in fact.
Yeah.
I had a bad play of it. This was illness. This wasn't bad rules teaching. This was like I was getting sick at the table. So that contributed to my not really enjoying it. There was more than just the illness, though. This felt to me like a game that's complicated for complicated sake.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, because I have heard from the other people you've played with since then that, overly convoluted, bad iconography, kind of
super bad iconography. Holy moly, bad iconography. But like, as I was battling this illness, the one clear thought I had was Kellen would hate this game. Kellen would hate this game. Just feels overcomplicated. I could be wrong. I want to try it again just because it wasn't an optimal play of it, but
And it's the Italian designers.
it is the Italian designer.
Is that the name of a person?
The Italian designers?
No, Trismegistus.
I have no idea what it is.
It's a Victorian magician.
Is
It is a magician, right?
No, it's
Yeah.
going to be an alchemist, if anything. It's all about alchemy.
Neil, what's the difference between an alchemist and a magician?
I think like the
250.
the mage route is probably pretty similar.
No, but what's the difference between an alchemist and a magician?
Oh, an alchemist combines
Pseudoscience.
elements using arcane mysticism in order to create new substances.
And
I will say the guy on the box cover does look a lot like Neelan. The look that guy had.
what does a magician do?
A magician uses magic to do any number of effects.
Which one's real?
Magicians in the modern sense, as a Victorian magician,
And that's
enthusiast. That's a fact.
My number 5 game that I was most excited about for Essen was Welkin. Have not played.
What's Welkin about, Kellen?
It's a light. It has one of those like set floating city-esque cool art that looks kind of like a mobile game with a market.
Yeah, I remember thinking it looked pretty.
Yeah, with a
Thinking of
fun
the right
stock
going.
market. So need to play that. Neelan, you're number 4.
My number 4 is Rush MD. This is the sort of spiritual sequel to Kitchen Rush. It's a real-time cooperative game that's sort of themed around Theme Hospital. This was kickstarted. I've backed it. It's not arriving until next month. I haven't played it.
Mark?
Mine was Terramara. I have not played Terramara. This is a worker placement game that has an interesting sort of battling over worker placement spots aspect to it. I don't think it's been released in the US yet, but I'm still looking forward to Terramara.
My number 4 was Deep Blue, the Days of Wonder release. We got a chance to play this at Shucks, and I quite enjoyed it. I wish I owned this, but I'm probably not going out and trying to buy it right now, given that I have 50 games on my shelf of shame. A very straightforward push-your-luck game where everyone is sort of racing their little boats around. I like the boat miniatures. I like the little push-your-luck elements. I like there's a little bit of a co-op where you can kind of help each other, but you don't really want to be helping each other. This is Deep Blue. Neil?
My number 3 is Roman Roll, another game I haven't played. It also hit Kickstarter. I have backed it, and it is arriving in the next couple of months.
I mean, in your defense, Essen was like a week ago, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
My number 3 was Paranormal Detectives. I played this a number of times. We've all played this, in fact. It's fine. It's a deduction game where there's a person playing the ghost, sort of Mysterium style, but instead of communicating with abstract art cards, you're communicating with a number of different little mini games. You're shaping rope, you're writing on the people's backs, you're using a Ouija board sort of mechanic. It's fine. I got a chance to play it a couple times over the holidays with non-gamer friends, and they enjoyed it. It's not one that have my heart set on keeping, but it was fine.
Yeah, I just don't anticipate the staying power of this one,
I agree.
personally.
Yeah.
My number 3 was Offshore, a game that has the exact same theme as Deep Blue, except I think in a more real location, which seems like a bad idea. I have not played this. I want to. Offshore.
My number 2 is Maracaibo, which is getting a lot of buzz. Capstone Games, somewhat of a spiritual successor to Great Western Trail by Mr. Pfister. This looks really cool. I like the piratey merchant theme, and people seem to like it. I was concerned for a while because I thought it was longer and heavier than Great Western Trail, which I thought had the perfect weight and length to it. But people are saying it's roughly in the same ballpark. So.
I've heard a lot of things that it's like quite a bit like Great Western Trail.
Apparently, more than I was anticipating.
Yeah.
But something about the combination of the theme, and honestly, if you just gave me rethemed Great Western Trail,
Sure.
because I don't care for the theme of Great Western Trail at all,
You could do
that
worse.
would be enough.
Yeah.
But Maracaibo seems like it's doing a lot of cool other stuff on the side.
Excuse me? The Americana of Great Western Trail doesn't speak to you?
Yeah, it was just...
Head on down to Kansas City,
Yeah.
get a gal, get on down to the saloon. Or a guy. We
Rustle
don't
up some
judge.
doggies.
Rustle up some doggies.
Yeah.
Some
Get along,
doggos?
little doggies. Are you familiar with American folklore music?
More than Nealon.
That's true. No argument there. My number 2 was Glenmore 2. See, I used 2 twice there. I have not played this yet. I do like Glenmore. I'm looking forward to Glenmore 2, but have not played.
We promised that as we rewind further back,
Yes.
that there are games that we have played. Most of the games on this list, we thought we'd start with the one that was least informative. So that's how we think about helping you guys. My number 2 I've not played. It is Kakerlaken Sushi, another hit, I assume, in the Kakerlaken franchise. A must-buy for me at some point, if only to say Kakerlaken.
My number 1 is Perseverance. This is upcoming from Mindclash Games. This is a series of games, in fact, where each game sort of feeds into the next one. It's not quite a legacy game. The games are designed to just be resettable and playable, but the story sort of continues from one game to the next. So ideally, if you were playing a campaign of this game, you'd start with game 1, then play game 2, then play game 3. And they're all different bespoke board games, but that just sort of follow on and evolve the world of Perseverance.
It's crazy. Like, I'm a fan of Minecraft games, and this seems very interesting, but it's crazy to me how much the idea of legacy or legacy style or campaign games has switched in my head over the last 2 years. Like, I remember when we were doing our very first podcast and we were talking about Charterstone, I was starting to realize all the baggage with legacy, but I was still holding on to that. Oh, but it still could be really, really cool. But now one of the first things that turned me off when I hear about a new game is to hear it has legacy aspects to it. It just immediately feels like a burden.
I'm kind of with you, but where this kind of works for me is because there's going to be some distance between the games. It can be like, well, let's play this game, and then a new game comes. You're
Right.
like, oh, let's play this like a few months or however long it's going to be between releases. There's something about it's a less of a weekly commitment and more of a, hey, this is going to play out over who knows how long, and we'll just play each game as it comes.
I think the only thing worse than a legacy game is an optional legacy game where it's like, you could do this as a camp. Like, I think even Maracaibo
does have that. Yeah.
It's like absurd.
Right.
It's like, here's a balanced Euro game, or...
Right. Yeah. My number 1 game is a game I haven't played. This is the only game named after a football team. This is Crystal Palace. Football as in international football, Kellen. And I see how you're looking at me. Not American football. Haven't played it. Looking forward to it. Heard good things.
My number one is from the only true and living doctor, Dr. Reiner Knizia, Babylonia. I don't know that this has a wide American release yet, and since I refuse to step out of the country, I have not been able to acquire it just yet.
Even with your money, except for Japan.
Even with my money?
Yeah, you won't spend your money outside the country except if it goes to the...
if it goes to
the Empire of Japan.
If it goes to the great Empire of JP, I am all over it.
Your money goes to two places, America or Japan, and nowhere else.
So let us move on. Let us rewind a little further. Let us go back. Let us talk about the games that we were anticipating around the time of Gen Con, but let us switch this up. Uh-oh. Instead of reversing counterclockwise, we're going to reverse clockwise around this table, starting with me. My number 5 game that I was excited about at Gen Con was Conflicting Legends. So Conflicting Legends is a mass party game of Rochambeau. I don't know why I can remember the foreign name, but not the American name of
Rock, Paper, Scissors.
Rock, Paper, Scissors. This is a game where you can kind of play Rock, Paper, Scissors with 2 people at once. It's very silly. You keep playing Rock, Paper, Scissors in a circle. I led a group of listeners to the podcast to play this game while you two were tryharding something else at Gen Con. There was another Indie Boards and Cards release that also came out at this time, which was Finger Guns at High Noon, another party game which I highly recommend over Conflicting Legends, which I believe I gave away to someone at the convention when they would not let me return it to them.
My number 5 game is a game that I have not yet played. This is Watergate by Capstone. I have heard nothing but great things about this game. I don't tend to play 2-player games very often, but there's enough good word about it that I'm very much looking forward to finally getting my hands on Watergate.
My number 5 game I was most excited for at Gen Con was Welcome to Dino World. This is a heavier roll and write design that's, doesn't really do that name justice because it's a fairly medium weight Euro game just with the roll and write mechanism thrown in. The decisions you're making are quite weighty and you're sort of mapping them out on this board. I played this a couple of times and it just didn't really sit well with me. Something about it just didn't feel right. Like there's something about the roll and write mechanism which I guess is better suited to a lighter game where you care less about the results of dice determining what you're able to do. Welcome to Dino World is a game that I sort of imagined I would get to, but I just never felt excited to.
Interesting.
And that's what I'll have to say about Welcome to Dino World.
It's a medium weight roll and write, right?
Yeah.
I've been curious about whether or not the evolution of roll and writes would ever work as will they become like medium weight? Is there space for that? And it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I think there was a couple of games experimenting with this idea in 2019.
Yeah.
I think Welcome to Dino World was one of them. I'm struggling to remember the other one. Roman Roll is by the same designer and is attempting to do a similar sort of thing of taking a more intricate game using the same mechanics. I hope that's more successful, but I just think that something about that mechanism lends itself to a little bit more of a flight of fancy game than something you want to be too invested in.
My number 4 game that I was looking forward to at Gen Con last year was Tonari. Tonari is a very simple set collecting game where everyone is moving one boat around a board. And it kind of looks and reminds me a little bit of Hey, That's My Fish, which is a not discussed game. It's not discussed very often anymore. Yeah. But what makes the game weird or interesting is that the game ends at any time when the boat can't keep moving, which could happen in 4 seconds, like it did when Christina beat me in our first 2-player game. But also, at the end of the game, your score is your score plus the score of the player to your left. And so what that means is you're trying to set up the player to your left to get good moves and good fish, but then hoping they desperately screw the next person in turn order because you don't want them to be a better power couple than your power couple. Tonari is one that I still have in my collection, and I brought it out at BGB West just this past few weeks, so it's getting played. I'm not convinced it's a good game, honestly.
Yeah.
But it plays so fast.
Yeah.
It sets up so quickly. It's beautiful to look at. And people are always intrigued by the scoring mechanisms.
Yeah, right.
And so I continue to bring it out. And if that's not worth something, then my name isn't Jiminy Callan Allen. I don't know. Like, it's a weird one to keep in my collection and one that I've been grappling with on my quest to 100.
When I glanced over at BGB West and saw you playing Tonari, I did have this tinge of like, I would play that again. Like, it's there's something to it.
My number 4 is a game that I've not yet played, but it has popped up on, I think, the Dice Tower West virtual market. And this is a Kellen Peepmont situation where he's telling me to buy it. If you want the game, just buy it. but I'm looking for it to go lower in price. This is a trick-taking game with time travel, so you can win tricks that you lost in the past. Just seems interesting, unique. I might pull the trigger on it tonight that I've looked at it again. So this is Time Chase, my number 4.
My number 4 game is Eternal Chronicles of the Throne, and man, on my list, this is the big winner of 2019. It is a deck-building duel game in the theme and vein of Magic the Gathering, that style of card battler where you're summoning creatures, using them to attack your opponent. It's really, really well designed. There are a couple of systems I think work extremely well. There's a way to sort of rush cards into play from the array, which you can use at limited opportunities. There is another mechanic where the game sort of accelerates very quickly towards an end game if someone chooses to move the game towards this accelerated condition where all the cards get more powerful. It's in the vein of games like Ascension, Star Realms, what's the other one? In the vein of games like Ascension and Star Realms, this has become my favorite dueling deck builder.
Hero Realm.
No, it's the one that weird sci-fi one.
I've
been playing a lot recently.
Shards?
Shards of Infinity. Yes, it's better than Shards of Infinity.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
That is Eternal Chronicles of the Throne.
We played this when we were leaving Gen Con.
It is not a good 3-player game, although it actually worked weirdly okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I enjoyed our play of it. I'd like to play it again.
Yeah.
My number 3 game from Gen Con that I was excited to check out was SHOBU, a 2-player abstract strategy game that has beautiful components. I have not acquired a copy of SHOBU yet.
Show who?
SHOBU. It's foreign.
Let me guess where it's from.
I don't know. Who could say? Who could say? I actually don't know.
Okay.
If it's from the great old JP or not. So... Two-player abstract is a hard sell to just get in the house, but I definitely want to check it out. The buzz has stayed fairly consistent. I think this is definitely one to check out.
Speaking of buzz, my number 3 has been getting a lot of good buzz, and it's been elusive to us, although it really shouldn't because it shares our name. It took our name. This is Barrage by Cranio Creations. Heard a lot of good things about it. Really excited to play it. For some reason, we haven't gotten a copy yet. Seems like a travesty to me. Number 3, Barrage.
I want to submit like a correction for the game on Board Game Geek.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's Barrage : the board game.
My number 3 most anticipated from Gen Con was In the Hall of the Mountain King. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago with Mike Delisio. He's quite high on it, so I'm
Delicious.
Mike Delicious. Popcorn King, Mike Delicious.
Fandango Tank.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he had some good things to say about In the Hall of the Mountain King, like the Eurosystems coupled with the way that you sort of dig into the board. It seems neat. I did not even get a chance to demo it at Gen Con, and we talked to the designer and he talked us through it, and that had me excited for it. Very excited to play it now, having spoken to Mike about it.
My number 2 game that I was excited about was the expansion for Inish, Seasons of Inish. So happy to have this. It adds a 5th player to the game. It adds more cards to the deck. It is a worthy expansion. It doesn't stray too far with what makes Inish great. It is not hard to add into the game. There is not a lot of friction, a lot of 18 modules. I'm looking at you, Food Chain Magnate. Seasons of Inish. If you like Inish, if you want 5 players, if you want more, it is a no-brainer.
It's probably my expansion of the year would be Seasons of Inish. It's the game that sort of saved Inish for me. My number 2 was Pipeline. Got a chance to play it a couple times. I really, really enjoyed it. A heavy economic game. Very smooth, very interesting. It's got a tile placement aspect to it that I don't love, but it is interesting. It's different. And I think the economic aspect of it, which is the majority of the game, is done really well and very smoothly. So my number 2, Pipeline.
Pipeline's one of my favorite games as well. It's very good. My number 2 most anticipated game from Gen Con was Sanctum by CGE. I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. This is a Diablo-themed game with Euro mechanics by the designer of Adrenaline. I think that I have a couple of plays of Sanctum left in me, and then I could be moving on from it, unfortunately. I still think the problems of the end game are too big to overcome. It just sort of makes everything you're doing up to that point, which admittedly is fun to do, but it weakens it very heavily as a competitive game. I think it's a fun experience, but one that maybe needed a little bit more time in the oven to get the end game figured out.
It should not be a board game. You heard it here first.
That is not what I said.
I mean, it should not be a competitive board game.
I agree with that. I actually do think it would work substantially better as a cooperative game.
He's got his mouth open. Oh, don't you dare, Kellen. And then I clarified my position.
Well, I mean,
oh, yeah, I
you
agree.
clarified
You're right.
your position by saying that cooperative games aren't board games.
Was that a clarification? Did I not clarify? My number one game that I was excited about to see at Gen Con was Black Angel, the TWA in space. This was one of probably the most anticipated games of last year, especially in the medium-heavy Eurogame category. I am fine with Black Angel. I don't love it, and with TWA on my shelf, gathering dust because I have not had a chance to play it in so long, I would seek out to play TWA again right now if I had a choice. I would love to coat TWA in the Black Angel paint. I do not get the people who are like, it's too neon, my space is black. And I'm like, no. Like, it's colorful. Let's have fun. You know, I think I already made this joke and this argument, but like the people who like, I saw a space film and the gunshots in space, you could hear them.
Right.
Like, you could hear them. There are gunshots in space. Okay? We've suspended our disbelief. So that's Black Angel.
For what it's worth, I think I'm a little higher on Black Angel than you guys. I want to play it again. I'm more excited, I think, to play it again than you guys are. But yeah, my number one was City of the Big Shoulders. Love this game. Really enjoyed my play of it. Looking forward to playing again, but I'm very, very happy to have a copy of City of the Big Shoulders.
Absolutely love it. The only reason it's not in my top 50 already is a feeling that maybe what I love from it is captured in the 18XX genre. And so I would like to play it again, as well as play some of the 18XX classics to kind of see where my tastes lie.
Yeah, it succeeded in exactly the same thing for me of catapulting my interest in 18XX. And this might be the year that
we do it. This will be the year we do it.
My number one most anticipated game from Gen Con 2019 was MegaCity Oceania. I think this lived and died for all of us at Gen Con. We played it. It's fine.
Yeah.
I still think it looks good. The things I'm excited for, it mostly does. Like, it is a dexterity game. It is a bad Euro game. It looks beautiful. I do remember looking at the finished product of the city we built, and it was made for some great pictures. I wish that the game was better. There's MegaCity Oceania.
So, we are going to rewind even further to talk about the games we are most excited about in 2019. I will say, as a year, 2019 disappointed me. Not a good year.
I would push back on that. I think that my favorite games of the year were pretty darn good. Maybe top heavy is how I'd classify it.
All right, so we are going to get right into the most anticipated games from 2019. Where are they now? A look back, a who's who of board games in 2019. The book you don't have to pay for, because you did have to pay for it in high school.
You did. I remember that.
Start us off, Mark.
So the game I was looking forward to fifth most in 2019 is a game that I can pronounce two of the words of. The first word is Tokyo, and the last word is market, and the second word is
Tsukiji.
There you go. So Tokyo TSUKIJI Market. I have not played this yet. This is a game by Jordan Draper. He has a certain aesthetic with a lot of his games.
I have it.
Oh,
at home.
It?
No.
Okay. I haven't even been following reviews. Kellen might have mentioned this, but this is like our oldest of the three lists. Was our overall. We did this earliest in the year, so I can't.
Yeah, it's essentially a container-inspired design with more.
Okay.
In the same way that one of his other games, Import-Export, is a Glory to Rome design plus more. There's a lot going on, and it's in a small box. It's beautiful and interesting, and I wanted to play it at BGB West, but just didn't learn it all.
Okay.
But we'll definitely get around to it in the next month.
So that was my number 5.
My number 5 most anticipated game for 2019. Back in January of 2019, I foolishly thought that Colossal would be able to deliver on a Kickstarter within a year. Eclipse 2nd Edition, or I think it's called Eclipse 2nd Dawn, was supposed to arrive and be played and be amazing in 2019. It is yet to come out. I think it's still a couple of months away. I love Eclipse the 1st edition, and this is supposed to be fixing some of the reported balance issues, depending on whom you ask, with the 1st edition. Clean it up, give it a nice new look. Yeah, I'm still excited for this. I love Eclipse.
I wish it was like Eclipse, dawn of the second day or something. You know what I'm saying?
I can see
that. I don't know why it's the second dawn for the galaxy.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Or Eclipse 2, first dawn, first light.
First light.
Eclipse 2, first light.
But it's the
Eclipse.
2nd edition.
Second dawn. Well, But it has to do with light, does it not?
That's true.
And the sun?
You got me.
My number 5 game that I was excited about in 2019 was Glorantha, The Gods' War, a Sandy Petersen game.
There you go.
Glorantha, The Gods' War shares about 80% of the DNA of Cthulhu Wars, its older brother, but it trades the chaos and crazy powers for a little bit more structure, a little bit more diplomacy, and a little bit more on rails with the powers. And those are, for the most part, a mixed bag of trading. It also has a very structured game where the beginning, middle, and end game have almost events to them that, in my mind, make it more like an event movie spectacle, popcorn experience, where I prefer Cthulhu Wars from a strategic gameplay perspective. If Cthulhu War... Okay, let's do a math equation. Something that both of you love.
Break it down.
At Mensa. If Cthulhu Wars, what's the math symbol for did not exist?
A circle with a dot in the middle.
Great. If Cthulhu Wars, circle with the dot in the middle, then Glorantha would be in my top 50 games, perhaps top 20 games. But with it in existence, I cannot have 2 games of this weight that are 80% the same with 8 different factions in each box. It's not possible. I have too much anxiety about it. If you would like to purchase Glorantha, The Gods' War Sandy Petersen game, please see me at StrategicCon 2020 and or Dice Tower Con West 2020, taking place in lovely Las Vegas, Nevada.
And bring cash.
And bring
a lot of cash.
A lot of money, because these boxes are heavy.
My number 4 game I talked about earlier. This is Pipeline, the beautiful economic game. Very, very good game. And very, very good pick by me for number 4.
My number 4 most anticipated game from 2019 was Sabotage. This is a Tim Fowers game that is attempting to emulate Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow's multiplayer. So this is a 2 versus 2 heavily asymmetric game where 2 people are spies, 2 people are villains. The spies are trying to infiltrate the villains' base and upset their doomsday machines, while the villains use their abilities to attempt to attack the spies. If the spies hack the villains enough, they win. If the villains attack the spies enough, they win. I've played this a few times, and it has a lot of the same problems that hidden movement games have for me, which is by design, you sort of have to give some wiggle room to the information that is available to the other player. So you cannot concretely know where someone is, or there wouldn't be a game. But what that means is that it boils down to a series of decisions of, well, they could be here or they could be here, and I'm doing my attack here and hope for the best. And those tend to be the biggest game-swinging moments in the game, and they're essentially coin flips. There are ways to sort of get more focused and more narrow, and the game is, to its credit, in all the times I played it, does come down to the wire. But something about that hidden movement mechanic still just never sat well with me. I think I am done with Sabotage.
My number 4 game that I was looking forward to in 2019 was Living Planet. So hopefully you didn't skip to this part of the episode, but if so, go back to the beginning of the episode, not 2019 or time.
Didn't go well. Not a good pick, right? That's what we're saying?
That's right.
Yeah.
It went about as well as the flavor text that you have to read before you play Living Planet and after you play Living Planet.
My number 3 game, I've mentioned before. This is a game that owes itself to us because they took our name, Barrage. Have not played it. Looking forward to getting my hands on a copy. But number 3, Barrage.
My number 3 game I was most excited for in 2019 was Escape Plan by Vitalis Soda. Escape Plan has entered and since left my collection. Kellen alluded to this earlier in the episode. The complexity of actions you have to take in Escape Plan in order to do what should be simple things was quite frustrating. I didn't hate Escape Plan. It just was a game that I just knew I would never break out ever again because of its weight, because of its length, because of its setup time, and because although it was replicating a heist game, it was doing it in an overly convoluted way, which is generally my problem with Vitalis Soda games, to be quite honest. I would love to see the same theme, the same beautiful look that Escape Plan had, with some rules just yanked out with it, to be quite honest. That is Escape Plan.
My number 3 was the Tom Lehman drafting game of the year, Res Arcana. Res Arcana is a great game that I still have in my collection, but I whiffle waffle back and forth on whether to recommend it or how much I in fact enjoy it. It is very straightforward. It is very cutthroat and back and forth. There is not as much interactivity in it as I would like. There's also a heavy reliance on drafting. I don't personally enjoy games where a lot of the upfront decisions are drafting your cards and then playing it out. It's my biggest bugbear with Agricola, and that was an ironic bugbear, Neelan. I saw you smirking. You guys like Res Arcana?
I did like it, yeah.
I like my play of it. When we were playing It's a Wonderful World last week, I was thinking, we should play Res Arcana sometime because it has a lot of similarities.
Yeah. Components are beautiful. There is an expansion for Res Arcana, but I just am sort of waffling with whether I can be bothered to pick that up now. That is Res Arcana.
Speaking of Lacerda, my number 2 is the latest Lacerda, one I have not yet played. This is On Mars. I do take some solace in the fact that, unlike Escape Plan, which I felt like was more or less universally panned, maybe not panned, but there wasn't much excitement when that game came out. I feel like I am hearing a lot of consistently good things about On Mars, so I'm hoping that is a better game than Escape Plan. So yeah, my number 2 is the latest Lacerda, On Mars.
My number 2 game that I was excited to play in 2019 was Elo Darkness. This is a card game for 2 players that is attempting to recreate a MOBA. I played a couple of games of this that didn't go great, to be honest. I think I like a lot of what it is trying to do. I still have it, and I'm still eager to give it another go. I feel like those games didn't go over well, not really through the fault of the game, but having 2 games like that is enough to set you back and wanting to play it. It also does a lot of front loading and requiring you to sort of construct a deck before you start a game of heroes and items. And I kind of wish that wasn't there. It seems like a game that would be best once you got 5-6 games into it, but getting past that learning curve is something I just haven't had the time to do. Like I said, I've still hung on to it. I want to try give it another crack. That is Elo Darkness.
My number 2 game that I was excited about was Black Angel. We talked about TWA in Space. Black Angel was one of the good games that came out in 2019.
My number 1 was the number 1 game I had anticipated in Gen Con, and it was a success. This was City of the Big Shoulders. It is the game that, as you all heard, turned on the rest of the Barrage boys to the 18XX genre. So thank you, City of the Big Shoulders.
My number 1 game that I was most excited for in 2019 was Warpgate. This is from the designer of Gods of Atlantis. It had a similar system of laying out cards, which then activate in order, but this has a 4X space type theme. We all had significant problems with the way that the randomization seems to come into effect. The board layout is randomized. Combat had a sort of a card system whereby, depending on the cards you drew, you may not just be able to win the battle. It just felt like it had a lot of issues. I admired the cleanness and like how fast it played for the genre it was trying to emulate, but just didn't really seem like a game I really wanted to revisit after our first couple of plays. That was Warpgate.
My number 1 game that I was most excited about for 2019 was the John Cloudis design Mezzo. Mezzo has shipped. It did make it to my house. It has like 5 boxes, and we've not gotten to the table yet. We've not gotten it to the table yet because it is a dudes on a map game, because it works best, I believe, at 4 players. We need to get the old gang back together, Christina, Cal, Mark, and Neelan, to play Mezzo. I'm a little afraid because I'm hearing that first games are going like well north of 3 hours, which is not something I'm too into.
Not a good sign for Neelan and Christina.
It's not a good sign for our Turn Turtles, who famously had a game of
Air, Land, and Sea.
Air, Land, and Sea take more than 3 hours.
That's not...
I was there, Neelan.
Near enough.
I watched Cloud Atlas twice while the game was ongoing. That is going to do it for this episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. We are not going to say things that we are looking forward to because we are talking too much.
Well, let's do one thing, though. What was your biggest miss and your biggest hit? Where did you screw up, and where did you get it right? I'll tell you where I did.
That's a very old callback. That's a deep cut.
See? That's for our hardcore fans. I'm going to say my biggest screw up was Trismegistus. I still want to give it another shot, but I've sort of soured on it. My number 1 was... My number 1, see, I predicted my number 1, and I was right twice. I was so right that I predicted it as number 1 twice. City of the Big Shoulders, both my number 1 in Gen Con, my number 1 for 2019, and the one I was most accurate with, my most on-the-money prognostication.
I would say my biggest miss was MegaCity Oceania. That was my number 1 anticipated game of Gen Con. I like the idea of mixing dexterity and strategy, but I just don't think the execution was there at all. I would say my biggest hit by far was Eternal Chronicles of the Throne. It's my new favorite deck building dueler.
The biggest miss for me was probably Conflicting Legends. I get excited about these stupid party games, and then I play them once and they disappoint me, like most parties I go to in my life. The biggest hit, probably Seasons of Inish, but that was kind of an easy call, knowing how much we all like the base game. I would say Res Arcana was a pretty big hit where I didn't know very much about it, but it hit higher than anticipated. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. You can find us on all forms of social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find us on Discord and chat with us at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord, DISCORD. You can leave a review of the podcast if you're interested in helping spread the good word, or you could just tell a friend. That is going to do it for this episode of the show. A huge thank you to Heart Society for their song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? The song you love to argue about whether or not it is the appropriate song for this podcast. So long, thank you, and good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I went to KFC this past week.
Speaking
What's
of
your
many
time?
talents.
Yeah. What's your time in and out?
Well, it wasn't a race, Mark. I was having a leisurely stroll with my lovely girlfriend,
Okay.
Christina,
Right.
the blue tank.
I remember her.
We thought about eating there, and then we thought better of it.
You're like, I'm 60 seconds away from home. I know for a fact.
We don't live in the best part of town. You know what I'm saying? Like right there.
I live next to a golf course. Listeners, use the information as you
Mark?
will.
What are you doing, Mark?
Narrow down. Triangulate.
Hello and welcome to episode number, I don't know it, of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I think it's 108.
It is 108.
Yeah.
Orca guess I would want to play another time, I think.
Okay.
And probably with, you're not going to like it, but I play with you at some point for sure.
Excuse me? Do you know anything about me?
Yes.
It's very cold in the
Yeah,
studio.
we're all wearing jackets now. I was trying to hold out.
Put the heat on.
No, it's fine.
No,
No, no, no.
seriously. It's not
Fake
gonna
heat.
be a
No
thing.
one likes fake heat.
Everyone loves fake.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure I
Fake
know what you were saying.
cold air?
Yeah.
That feels good. Fake heat?
Fake heat feels great.
No.
Check this out.
Fake heat does not feel
No.
good as fake cold.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's true, right? You get a nice fire going. What do you have, a fireplace, Neelan?
I don't have a
Well,
fireplace.
then
That's fake
don't
heat.
turn on the heat. What are you doing?
The heat's on.
Well, you're turning it on with your phone?
Yeah.
What is this, the future?
This is the future. Feel the heat
2020.
blowing in.
What's our time looking like, Neelan? It's looking bad over there. That's a prediction. I got it right.
You think we're well, okay? So 105. What,
Yeah.
What do you
we
think?
still have you?
Yeah.
We're not done?
We're not done.
oh my god.
Oh, my God.
Okay, but real quick,
3,
before you do that,
2, 1.
boring.
All right, Neelan, what's your number one?
Thank you. My number one most anticipated game from Gen Con 2019 was MegaCity Oceania. And probably with, you're not going to like it, but I
Duh.